last episode and had an opportunity to make the roster, but it's pretty interesting to see him with the injury exemption because it's an extended exemption. This is David Bada just for like that international. So he's not released. He's not part of the 53. He's still exempt. So it's going to be we kind of get to stash him a little bit, which is nice because I did feel like with the way he performed in preseason that there was a chance that someone might snag him if we tried to sneak him on the practice squad there.
It's like he doesn't even exist. He's in like nowhere land or something.
Limbo, yeah.
He's in limbo.
I hope he's actually hurt. It would be really unfortunate if he's just stashed and he's not hurt and he could be on somebody's active roster somewhere. You know what I mean? That kind of hurts him.
I mean, that's just part of it, though, right? Like that's part of the game, and I'm actually stoked about that. I don't like David Bada going anywhere else. You guys know I like David Bada a lot, so I'm actually kind of stoked about that.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about that. It's nice to have him like stashed away and safe. So hey, let's jump into it because there's a lot to talk about tonight, and it's a big week. We're a couple of days from kickoff of week 1, which I'm insanely excited about. So welcome to another edition of Washington Intervention. Your host, What Gibbs FF, Ryan, and we got Chase Vernon and Mark Krawczyk as co-hosts as well. So thank you for joining tonight, guys.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Anything for you.
So we got a pretty good shot. I mean, I'm excited because we got the 53-man roster locked in. We were kind of last Monday talking about who we thought was going to make the roster, the different cuts where we thought we would be trying to sneak guys in. We got a big week 1 preview with the playing against the LA Chargers this week. And then going into a couple things in there, I want to pick your brains as we get through the show, and we'll hit it later. But I want to talk about Curtis Samuel a little bit and that groin injury that's kind of persisting. So we'll hit a lot on the roster and hit a lot on week 1, bringing you into the season. So 53-man roster released. I mean, I had a bunch of surprises that I saw on there. I think when we talked through, Chase, you had us at like, I think 24 for offense, right?
Yeah, it was something around there. It was not a lot of offensive players, and it definitely swung that way. I mean,
yeah, we ended up with 26.
Does that include Cheeseman?
No, Cheeseman they consider like a special teams.
I didn't. So, yeah,
they break that up a little bit. Special teams is 3. It's always like the kicker, punter, long snapper. Yeah. They don't count on like the offense or defense number.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, you know, like as we kind of dissect like this roster and everything, I thought that we would kept a lot more offensive linemen, defensive linemen, you know, some depth at cornerback. I mean, there's one that I still cannot get over right now when it comes to those cuts, and I was, you know, extremely disappointed about. But overall, the roster looks pretty good over there for Washington. I mean, there's some surprises that are out there, but I like Washington's setup. Like, how are y'all feeling about it?
I'm feeling good about it. I mean, there were a couple shocks. I was kind of surprised that we cut Peyton Barber was one of them. And I know a lot of people were kind of calling for that, but I felt he was a very reliable piece that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. And I felt like to keep 4 tight ends and keep veterans like a Ricky Seals-Jones, Reyes didn't really surprise me because I think he played so well and was getting such a good reputation as a blocker. That one didn't surprise me, but the 4 tight ends versus cutting Barber was one of the big ones for me. And then I think when we look at the receivers, the other piece that really stood out to me was keeping DeAndre Carter and Dax Milne. I thought that it was going to be one or the other from a returns game perspective. I was surprised we actually kept both on the 53. I thought we'd try to sneak Dax in on the practice squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I was shocked that they didn't put Dax on the practice squad. But I do think that he is going to be the next Adam Humphries. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Dax. I mean, yeah, you said it, Chase, but it kind of fits. I know you did. I'll give you the credit.
No. I would say like, wow, the next Adam Humphries. Oh my God, that's a gold line.
No, I'm not saying that at all. But in terms of a roster fit, I think that if he can grow into that slot role and be a consistent guy, great. But I think you see more this week coming out about the H-back being used in Scott Turner's offense, and with the 4 tight ends, that's going to be huge. John Bates is going to slide in nicely as that H-back guy, that blocker for them. I was kind of shocked to see only the 9 linemen. I thought for sure we would go with the 10. but I again, we always hype up our guys. We always hype up our players to, the Jimmy Morelands and all those guys. Jimmy Moreland's still not on a roster, right? He still hasn't been picked up by anybody. So the guys like Wes Martin that I thought would make the roster or at least get scooped up by somebody, he's on our practice squad now. Nobody we released. I mean, obviously Peyton Barber did get scooped up by Oakland or Vegas, but nobody else got scooped up at all, which was probably the biggest shock for me.
Yeah, and I think it shows what's interesting is all the people that we were talking about, like, hey, do we overvalue guys like Jarrett Patterson or Reyes, some of those guys, like, they actually ended up making the 53-man roster. So maybe we weren't overvaluing them as fans. Maybe we were actually seeing that correctly, and we were spot on there because both of them made the cut there. And, we were kind of looking at both those guys as are we overrating these guys, seeing what we see in the preseason and then being like the young up and coming players. And even in our hype video, like Reyes is front and center in there, like they're pumping him up. So, that kind of leads me to think, like, is it just to get that international audience, or is he going to be part of the offense? And Chase, what do you think? Is he actually going to be carving out a role early on, or do you think that's just like to get that international excitement?
No, as for Reyes, he's not going to be doing really anything for us. He might see a few snaps a game outside of special teams, but I think he could be like a tremendous special teams player if he can, figure out a way of doing that. But Jimmy Moreland was weird, right? Because they said that they cut him because of the injury that he suffered to his knee, and that he might not be ready, but it was just a knee bruise is what it all turned out to be. So he was going to be ready for week 1. It's just kind of like a head scratcher overall. But I mean, everything from like Jeremy Reeves to, Peyton Barber and Jimmy Moreland, I think we're all kind of like shockers. I mean, Peyton Barber, signed with the Raiders. I think Reeves ended up somewhere. Did he end up on our practice squad?
Practice squad, yeah.
Practice squad,
that's
yep.
what it was. And then Jimmy Moreland, I still can't figure out why he doesn't have a job somewhere. It's killing me.
All right. Now that I said this, it kind of hit me. I think is he technically on the IR? Isn't he stashed away? Didn't they release him with an injury clause?
No, it looks like he's officially been waived, and it was an injury settlement. So,
yeah, that is crazy though, because I thought for sure Dallas or Philadelphia could easily use him and start in their secondary. So I don't know how he doesn't have a job.
And I don't care that he was a late round pick. All right, Jimmy Moreland was a boss out of JMU. Yeah. Okay, like he crushed it for us stepping onto the scene. So I'm definitely disappointed about that whole situation. But it is what it is, man. This is time to move forward with this roster and our 7 wide receivers, our 4 tight ends. Like, I mean, if anybody says that we don't have any pass catchers, they obviously didn't look at a roster, because we have more pass catchers than we do, offensive linemen or any other position that matters. So I'm looking forward to what, the arsenal that they built around Ryan Tannehill and what, these players are going to have to offer. And if Curtis Samuel can be healthy and playing in week 1, which they're expected to anyways.
By the way, you just dropped a Ryan Tannehill instead of Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're playing too much fantasy football.
I'm sorry. I meant Ryan Fitzpatrick. Sorry. I went on a little rant. Hold on. Let me take one headphone off my ear. Now I can hear myself. I'm good.
You know what I think it is, if you think about like guys like Reeves and Moreland, because they were somewhat of surprise cuts, but I think when you look at the overall roster and the depth that we started to bring in at DB, bringing in guys like William Jackson and St. Juste, right? Those guys are going to get legit playing time right out the gate. You had like McTyer come out of like nowhere this year and was a really pleasant surprise. I think that the two that I was most surprised about, and I think, Troy Apke, that was one that I was pretty shocked about. And I think it just goes back to his value is on special teams, but everything that I'm reading is that they actually value him on the outside, and that he might actually get some meaningful snaps. So it'll be interesting. Mark, what was your reaction to Troy Apke over there?
Yes, at first I was shocked. I didn't think he stood a chance. Yes, of course. But when you see how Rivera really shaped this roster and to favor the special teams, I thought it made total sense after the fact. I mean, yes, Jimmy Moreland was like, it was like a gut punch. And then it was basically like, okay, Jimmy's cut, but Troy Apke is a lock. And it was like, what? But when you see how Rivera wants this roster to be built and they want very strong special teams, it makes total sense. That nonsense that you just spewed about him playing on the outside and having a role, no, there's no chance on that. They have 4 or 5 other guys that can do that. It's not going to happen. He's not playing unless
Got
4
to throw a
guys
big
get
shout out
injured.
to Hog Farmer Chris over there joining us. Thanks for hopping on, man. We appreciate it. I'll do a little plug there too, because we always talk about the hog farmers and the charitable work that they do over there for pediatric cancer. So I love seeing him popping in. So if you haven't checked out the Hog Farmers, please definitely go check out their website and their Twitter account. They do some great stuff over there. Yeah, so I like that. Troy Apke defensive player. That's a nice little ad there. I like that. That's Mark's. That's going to be your new Twitter handle now. I think. Forget Mark Crow. It's Troy Apke DPOY. So Mark, I got a question for you as we talk about the DBs, because last week there was a guy that I felt was a pretty big lock, and I think you had kind of said he didn't play well in the preseason, and you thought he was going to get cut in Derek Forrest. Were you surprised that Forrest made it?
Yeah, I'm still shocked about it, to be honest with you. I saw him taking poor tackling angles. I didn't see him do anything in coverage. So I'm still waiting to see with Derek Forrest. I know they just drafted him, but I don't know how he would have been scooped up by anybody else. I don't know how they couldn't have stashed him on the practice squad. No.
Yeah, but I think the reason I thought he was going to make the roster was that special teams experience, right? Because he did it in college, and I felt like he was going to be a big asset for us there. So I think it just kind of shows that versatility of when you can be that guy on special teams and you could bring that versatility, how important it is to make that back end of the roster. You obviously have to be able to contribute on whatever side of the ball you play, and there's injuries. It's a long season. But Forrest just seemed like they valued him from a special teams perspective. I was happy to see, obviously, Bobby McCain make it. That was a big one for me, and really happy that we kept the Shazer Everett too, because those guys are safeties that I really like to see make the roster. And the big thing for me that also came out on the defensive side was keeping 4 linebackers, one of which was Khaleke Hudson. So you kind of have that undersized linebacking core. Chase, what were you seeing there? Do you think that's somewhere that we maybe look still to add in a veteran as the season goes on, or you think we kind of roll with that group?
Well, I do want to point out real quick too that Derek Forrest barely played on special teams in the preseason. The most amount of snaps he saw at any position in preseason was actually 3 on punt coverage. So, that's something that's, a little bit like, head scratching, and maybe he just plays more and they just wanted to see what else they had because they knew that he was going to play on special teams. So they just wanted to see their other guys there. But that's something that's, a little bit head scratching to an extent. What was your question though, one more time?
About the linebackers. Are you surprised we only kept 4 with Hudson being one because he's kind of that like Buffalo nickel? And do you see us bringing in a veteran linebacker at any point throughout the season?
Well, we're messing around with Mayo, correct?
Yeah, he is back. We currently have 5. Initially, it was 4.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
It went down to 4, and then Mayo got signed back on. So I think that's all right. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't like Mayo. He does make mistakes on a regular basis, but I mean, hey, dude, it takes time to be able to develop that. Nobody's really going to get too many snaps behind Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis should be a full-time player. And then when it comes to some of the other guys that are playing on the outside as like edge rushers and stuff, yeah, they'll have an impact. But I think this is more about, the attitude and the work ethic that a lot of these guys bring to the table in practice and in the weight room as well. By the way, it's more just a testament to them versus what their skills are on the football field and implementing a thing that Ron Rivera wants to have, like that whole camaraderie within the locker room, but also like just the environment or the, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the system that's in place. So I do like what we did at linebacker, and I think that it's going to be something that almost, stands the test of time as we continue to build this defense up over the next few drafts.
Yeah, and I think with Mayo, one of the big things that I was actually surprised he was someone that got cut, because I think he's been just such a good standout from a special teams perspective. I think he's had multiple seasons where he's been a starting linebacker, so I think he brings you that depth. But it was really for me his special teams play, especially when he was at Carolina, that I feel like really kind of brought him into that group of like one of those elite linebackers from a special teams perspective. So was surprised that he was cut, wasn't surprised that he was brought back as soon as we had an opportunity to kind of expand that roster. What was the corresponding move for that? I don't remember what that was off the top of my head. Do you guys remember?
That may have been
The IR'd someone.
Yeah. That's gonna bother me. I have it. No, it was Forrest. Yeah. Okay.
So, good job, guys.
I don't understand why, initially that couldn't have been the move. I mean, regardless, Mayo's back. But I agree with you, Ryan. I definitely think it was the special teams that made me question why we cut him to begin with. I knew that. I mean, look, he's the fifth linebacker. He's not going to play unless you have. I mean, he's technically like Bostic's replacement. But if Bostic were to get hurt, then they would move. You would have Holcomb play that role. You would have Davis play that role. So he's not going to see the field at all to play defense. But it was the specials because you still need linebackers to run downfield on special teams. So that was the shocking part that we only kept 4 initially.
You need those wedge busters, although
Exactly.
wedges aren't even a thing anymore.
But still, regardless. I mean, from a standpoint that we're going to use the Buffalo nickel and we're going to have the safeties playing in the box as much as we are. Like football-wise, there only should be 4 guys that play linebacker for us. And even that's kind of a stretch with Hudson. So the 3 guys, realistically with Curl and then Collins filling in. So
I've said this for a long time, but I think Khaleke Hudson is going to end up playing a lot more than people think, and I think he's going to be a really pivotal piece to this defense. So I'm excited about him. Now, Martin, you had talked about 10 offensive linemen there back, when we were talking last week, when we were talking roster cuts. Wes Martin ended up getting cut. I think you mentioned he got sneaked in to the practice squad. Were you surprised at that move? You kind of settled with the 9 that we have?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Initially, 2 weeks ago, I said I didn't think Martin was going to play or wasn't going to make the 53. And then I said watching him last week, I've always liked Wes Martin in the run game. He can attack all day long. He's got terrible feet side to side, but him getting to the second level is really nice. But I thought he showed enough to make the final 53. But again, with the guys that we've moved all over the place, we have the utility guys that can play all over the place. So I'm not shocked that they went with 9, especially with the 11 pass catchers that we have on our roster.
Chase, I want to throw a question over to you because one of the things that you had brought up was you were thinking we were going to roll with just 2 quarterbacks, right? I think you said Fitzpatrick and Heineke, and you thought Kyle Allen was a cut candidate. What were your thoughts when you saw Allen make the roster and us going with 3?
I was a little bit shocked. I mean, why? Like, that's the one question I had is why?
Is it because it's a 17-game season, though?
That doesn't matter to me. Like,
or a COVID season too. Like you got the mix, right? Like, do you need to keep that extra guy?
Nobody wants Kyle Allen. Okay, like that's the reality of it. Nobody needs or wants Kyle Allen. So Kyle Allen could have ended up on our practice squad, and if he did end up on our practice squad, then there's actually that little window that you have to be able to allow your players to play. Like, you can pull them up from your practice squad a couple of days ahead of time if something does happen. So, I mean, we had Steven Montez, that I think made it to our practice squad. If not, then he's just a free agent sitting out there.
No, he had the option. He had the option to return to our practice squad, and he chose Detroit's practice squad. Actually, he felt like he had a better path there.
Yeah, if I had, if I had Jared Goff ahead of me on the depth chart, I'd go there too. But so let's just hypothetically say that he doesn't, Kyle Allen, doesn't end up making it to our practice squad. I'm sure that there's a quarterback out there that's suitable enough to be able to learn our offense. It's not the most difficult offense in the world, and to be able to perform at a decent level in the case of something happening with COVID or whatever the case is. If not, we can just have Antonio Gibson run the ball 40 times that game, and everything will be fine with me. I'm down. But Kyle Allen just isn't that's in no way, shape, or form a good play for us to have at quarterback at any point in time. For him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL or even be suitable, it's just not. Yeah, it's just not something that I'm interested in. I don't know why we kept him outside of Heineke having an injury history.
But don't forget, we had traded for Kyle Allen the previous year, so I think it's someone that Scott Turner and Ron are comfortable with.
Oh, they
and
love
I think
him.
he does have good command of our offense, and I think he was playing pretty well against the Giants before that, Jabril Peppers leg whip. So, I was happy that we kept Kyle Allen. I'm on a different side of it. I feel like he's a capable backup, and I think for me in a COVID season where maybe you have one quarterback that's kind of isolated and quarantined a little bit in case something happens, I think we could do a lot worse than Kyle Allen. And then I look at Steven Montez, and for him to get picked up made me feel like Kyle Allen would have gotten picked up, because if anybody had interest in Steven Montez after what he's shown the last couple of years, I felt like that was probably a good indication that Kyle Allen would have gotten snagged. And I'm not surprised that Montez chose Detroit either, because they only kept two quarterbacks, one who is David Blau. So I actually think Montez has an opportunity to, if he can show something over in Detroit, actually make the 53-man roster eventually throughout the season. So I'm not surprised that he took that route.
But don't forget, who is the head coach over there, right? For the Lions, they're bringing the Saints system over with them. And Steven Montez is a guy who most viewed as a mobile type quarterback who could actually run that Taysom Hill role. So I think they're bringing him over there to, see if he actually is able to do that and run that role. And I think that's what actually enticed him. And the guy ran a 4.68, which is 83rd percentile 40-yard dash at 6'4", 231 pounds. This guy is essentially a younger version of Taysom Hill, who actually, has that upside. I think that Montez was brought in not just to be a backup quarterback. He could actually be that gadget player. And I think that's why he was probably, a little bit more attractive.
My issue with Montez was always, and we won't harp on this because we're talking practice squad quarterback here, but he always just looked scared when he was in there. And I never felt confident when Montez was in there. I actually liked guys like Nate Sudfeld better when they were here.
Yeah.
But to your point, he does have that athleticism that a lot of teams are looking for from the position. So, with that size, that 6'5", 235, that's a big boy there. So, I could see where they're going with the Lions, and I could see why he chose them. Now, one other quick question for you guys too is, as we talk 53-man roster, Dustin Hopkins obviously made the team as our kicker. That's someone that a lot of fans throughout the preseason have been kind of clamoring for, get us some competition. We did bring in Eddie Pinheiro. Any chance for controversy throughout the season there?
So
I'll start with you, Mark.
I think Ron loves Dustin Hopkins as a person, as a player. I think Dustin Hopkins has things going on, and I was trying to dig this up, and I heard something along the lines, through Twitter, I read that he had some personal things going on this offseason. I honestly think that if Hopkins struggles, I think he just steps aside. They put him on the IR. Even if it's short term, they just put him on the IR and say that there's an injury, and then they let Pinheiro kick. But I don't think it's going to be a matter of them releasing Hopkins. I don't think Hopkins goes anywhere. I think Hopkins is just having some off-the-field stuff going on, and it's definitely messing with him mentally. Personally.
We also, when we think of Dustin Hopkins, we remember some missed kicks, like the Bengals game, right? There's a couple ones that stand out that were big pressure situations where fans kind of remember him. But at the end of the day, over the last 3 seasons, you're talking about anywhere from 11th to 15th ranked kicker in the league from both an efficiency and scoring perspective. That's an efficient kicker. They're not easy to find. We've seen plenty of teams get rid of pretty reliable kickers and then go years without finding a kicker. So they don't grow on trees. They are tough to find. And I think when you talk about getting rid of someone like Dustin Hopkins, who is really good from a kickoff perspective, we never get returns that we have to cover. And he's a pretty reliable guy. I think he misses in that 40 to 45 range, but he's definitely that guy that I feel pretty good about keeping long term.
The problem is that we always play these stupid close games. We never either win a game, and we never really lose a game. every time he misses a kick, it just kills us. We always are like, oh, well, that's going to hurt us. And it always does. So I think that's where so much hate towards Hopkins has come from, because we always lose those 2-point games where that if Hopkins made that 40-yarder in the first quarter, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Listen, I like Dustin Hopkins, right? I smoked pot with Dustin Hopkins. It was him and Sloan Kettering, and they were blazing that shit up every day. So I'm okay with that.
Who was the other one? It was Hopkins and who?
Sloan Kettering. And they're blazing that shit up every day.
That's funny. Well, now we got a random drug. If we get popped with a random drug test for Dustin Hopkins and we don't have a kicker week 1, we're coming back to the tape here and we're blaming you.
No, it was just Step Brothers, guys. It was just Step Brothers. If you haven't.
That's funny. So I think from a 53-man roster perspective, those are really the big ones for me. Before we get into week 1, though, any other roster moves that really stuck out for you guys? Anything that you were surprised about?
The one thing that's kind of the biggest tease right now is Ron's presser the other day, where he basically said, hold on, we got something going on. I can't really talk about it, but something may happen. I just want to
sign Eddie Piñeiro.
But nothing, we're all thinking it's going to be an edge rusher. We're thinking it's going to be a linebacker. We're going to trade. Luke Kuechly's coming out of retirement, I heard. And I'm just waiting anxiously.
Wait, so what was this that happened? I missed this.
He was at a presser, and they were talking about we had 52 men on the roster for a while, and we still may. I'm not sure if we filled that slot or not, but he had basically said at one of his press conferences that we had something that was in the works that he couldn't talk about, but we'd have an article to write about soon, was basically what he said. So it got a lot of fans hyped up, like, is Luke Kuechly coming out of retirement? Then we signed Eddie Piñeiro to the practice squad. It was like, is that it? Was that the person? But it was, I don't know. It's a big teaser that's still kind of lying out there. And Mark, I'm in the same boat as you. It would be awesome if Kuechly came out of retirement, but I think we'd have to trade for him, right? Because Carolina's going to have the rights. I don't really want to give up draft picks with this team, especially.
But that was the thing. He said that draft picks may be involved
in play.
Yeah. So
Chase looks like blown away over there.
Give me something. Don't tease me totally.
Yeah, they did talk about the draft picks, which is what really I think got everyone kind of like the wheels turning, like it's something that's bigger than we think. I'm trying to think of the other name that was thrown around. That was actually someone that was pretty big from a draft pick perspective. Oh, I saw like a Fred Warner one. I was like, that's not happening. But if that happened, dude, this defense, can you imagine if you put Warner in on this defense? Lights out, like unbelievable.
Did he say that it was involving the linebacker corps?
No, he didn't say anything.
No, there were just people like posting everything at that.
He was just throwing stuff out there, and it was just like, we'll eat anything up, anything. Who knows?
So more to come. We'll see if anything comes. Maybe next week when we're talking, we've made a big move. But I feel like this close to the season, we're 6 days away. Like, I think a move would have already happened if it was going to be something that was big and significant. Now, the other thing I was thinking about, like, was Curtis Samuel, is his groin that bad? And is it going after another weapon or something like that? But, it's all posturing at this time, and we'll see what comes from it. But I'm very curious. I'm hoping we get some big news and something fun to talk about next week from that perspective.
I didn't think that the Curtis Samuel injury was that big of a deal. I thought he was fine. Like, he was planning on week 1 return anyways, and they were just going to hold him out the preseason.
So he's tried to come back a few times and it's flared up. So I think that's where the questions come into play. And we haven't ruled him in or out for this week. So it's kind of questionable. And if you even watch some of the videos that they posted from practice last few days, he's not going at 100%. So I don't know if he's just being cautious ahead of week 1 and not wanting to flare anything up. But that has me a little bit concerned. And to be honest with you, when it comes to a guy who relies on that explosiveness and that speed and that change of direction, like Curtis Samuel, and that's a big piece of his game, is being able to change direction very quickly. I'd rather just sit him out week 1 and not rush it back, because those things can just linger for a whole season, and I'd rather just hold him out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Ben Standing actually reported 35 minutes ago that a deal was struck with Washington, an injury settlement, and Jimmy Moreland is officially waived. So, per the transaction wire, he could be a free agent tomorrow.
There you go.
That's interesting. That I want to see where he lands, because he could land with the Steelers would be a good spot for him. Like you brought up earlier, I mean, he could start for both the Eagles and the Cowboys. Like that's that's not good. But you know what is good, man? You know what's awesome is Trophy Smack and their badass trophies, right? Like, dude, these trophies, like their belts that they have, they weigh like 50 pounds. Not literally. They're just super, super heavy, but they're super legit as well. And we actually have one coming in for our league that I'm extremely, extremely stoked about. And then their trophies and stuff are like 4 feet tall. Like they have some of the sickest stuff. If you guys go check it out, trophysmack.com, use promo code CIRCLE at checkout. You just have to have the ring inside of your cart along with the trophy, and you actually get that ring for free. Go check it out, trophysmack.com. Use promo code CIRCLE. You get a free $60 ring with the purchase of a trophy or a belt. Make sure y'all go do that for all of your fantasy leagues. Or, hey, maybe it's just a Washington football team, fandom thing where you want to get a trophy because we haven't had one in 30 years. So go to trophysmack.com. Use promo code CIRCLE. Go pick yourself up a trophy.
Mark, I think we're going to grab that belt for our league, because I'm pretty confident going into this year, and just rolling up in that draft next year with the belt round. I'm digging that.
I'm not kidding you. Like we were talking about, because we went to the to Canton for the fantasy football convention, right? And for the Champions League, they actually had the belts that they bought for everybody, and they all wore them in. And I picked up Ian Hartit's belt, and that thing was so heavy. I was like, what the hell? And then he made like this little clip like of his grandma holding the belt. And like, I was like, dude, how did she even pick that thing up? Because that thing is so ridiculously like legit. So yeah, no, those belts are awesome. I would definitely recommend them.
Chase, it's going to be great torturing him this year. Mahomes is going down. His season he's going to be relying on Zach Wilson to win him a championship.
So I have built up, this is part of the reason I snagged all those receivers. I've built up enough depth where if something happens, I'll get aggressive in the trade market. I'm expecting an injury to happen. I'm expecting to not come out of this season clean. So
I'll go DJ Moore for Ben Roethlisberger.
So keep in mind, Chase, this is DJ Moore at like 4 years at like really, really cheap salary. That's not happening. But anyway, hopping back. I mean, let's get back to Washington football real quick, because I could talk fantasy all day. But week one, it's already here, man. 6 days away. I cannot wait. And then a quick turnaround against the Giants, which I'm also very excited about. But week one, we got the Chargers. We got Justin Herbert. We got that kind of high-powered offense over there. A healthy Austin Eckler. My biggest concern is sticking with some of those weapons. And I know our defense is great, but do we get any slowdown on Justin Herbert? Because he didn't really play in the preseason. They have a new offense coming in. How do you think they hit the ground running, Chase?
I think it'll be very interesting to take this offense and apply to the Chargers, because I like the Chargers' old system. Herbert did very, very well with it right off the bat. Now you're going to turn around and you're going to switch up the offense on him. I expect his passing attempts to come down just a little bit. Overall, I do expect him to still be efficient. Now, it's all about how we can get to him and if we can contain him inside the pocket. Because if we're going to sit there and we're going to blitz him off the edges and we're going to force pressure on him, if we don't have contain, he's a fast dude. Like I think he has like a top 8 at least, maybe top 5 40 time for a starting NFL quarterback. So to be able to contain these guys is crucial. And if he breaks the pocket and there's nobody there to get him, like a Jamin Davis, to be able to contain him, I think that we could end up seeing a good amount of first downs or drives continued because of the fact of our defense unable to contain him. And when we sit there and we look at the third and long situations, right? If we do end up getting a sack, once again, if we play like a prevent defense type that we did back in 2020, we're not going to be able to, keep him from picking up some of those first downs because of how many people we blitz. We could be looking at drives up against Justin Herbert that are 12, 13, 14 plays long that could wear down our defense. And towards the end of the game, that's not what you want to see. We could be struggling like huge, like massive parts in the fourth quarter. So we could go up in the fourth quarter, but if our defense, isn't ready to be able to handle that snap count that they're going to most likely have to handle, we're going to be in trouble in the fourth quarter. and it could cause us to give up some big time, points when it comes to that. And that's the type of offense that they want to build over there for the Chargers, is one that can sustain drives and wear down defenses. And they're not going to do it through smash mouth football. They're going to do it through spreading their guys out and getting, the ball in Austin Eckler's hands, getting the ball in Justin Jackson's hands out of the backfield, getting the ball in Keenan Allen's hands within 10 yards and letting him run after the catch. And having all this, like forcing your defensive ends to blitz time and time again, it's exhausting. Luckily, we have a very, very deep, roster, but if we're not containing him, it's going to be a very long day, towards the second half.
Now, they did bring in Joe Lombardi, right? So that's going to be a new offensive coordinator there. I was surprised they didn't give Herbert any snaps in the preseason, because I feel like young quarterback, new offense, just felt like, they could use that kind of seasoning leading up into week one. But so that piece was a little bit of a surprise to me. I'm more interested to see how our offense goes up against this defense. I mean, Derwin James has a healthy return, but this is a defense that got thrashed in the run game last year, right? The Chargers gave up almost 120 rushing yards per game last season. They did bring in Brandon Staley, right? They cleaned house on that staff completely. Staley used to work under Sean McVay over in with the Rams, and did great work on their defense there. They brought in Ronaldo Hill, so they'll run more of like a 3-4 hybrid on the defensive side. But that team gave up a lot, and I think it's been an issue for a little while. They brought in Linval Joseph, and he's not getting any younger. He's 32 years old. But do you see us leaning heavily, Mark? I'll start with you on Antonio Gibson, or do you see us trying to spread the ball and get vertical with the new weapons that we have on offense from a receiver perspective?
I really do truly believe that Gibson's going to be our number one guy. We're going to lean on him all season, but I think we have to lean on him, especially this week. Every time you change over a system, it should take 2 years, especially when you're putting guys into new places. So look, they're superstars on that defense, and that's the biggest scare. But I think you have to rely on Gibson just to open up fits. He hasn't been the hottest in preseason. If you can get Gibson going with the chunk plays early, they're going to design plays where Logan Thomas is wide open and make it easy on Fitz. But I definitely think Gibson's going to get the carries coming out the gate for sure.
Yeah, and they do have, like we said, the healthy Derwin James. That's a big, big piece. And I think a lot of fans are going to be watching that game, because we had the opportunity to draft Derwin James, right, when we drafted Ron Payne. And that's always been a kind of what if scenario for a lot of Washington football team fans there. They were two of my favorite players coming out of that draft, so I was happy either way. As an FSU guy, I loved Derwin James, but I think he's a huge impact maker. They also brought in FSU's Asante Samuel Jr., so that's a nice added piece to that secondary there. So it's going to be interesting, but they haven't done anything to shore up that run defense, and that's where I think bringing in Antonio Gibson and hitting him early, I think, is going to be an important piece to our offense this week, and I think it's going to help open things up. But Derwin James is going to be a tough matchup for us, and I think for any team in the NFL. But that's really the big thing, is that run game for us, and I think that's how we're gonna succeed this week one.
I think the one thing that I'm going to be watching is that rematch, is the Rashawn Slater, Chase Young rematch.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome. That's going to be the difference maker. I really think Chase needs to be the X factor, and we cannot blitz like crazy, because they are going to spread it out. I mean, they have Bulaga on the right side. They did bring in Corey Lindsley at center. Like, they have a solid offensive line. But it's going to come down to Slater and Chase. Can he contain him? I think.
Well, that's one of the big matchups for me, is our interior pressure, because we're going to have a healthy Ioannidis. We're going to have Payne. We're going to have Allen. Their guard play is one of their big question marks, right? They brought in Matt Filer from the Steelers, and he had played on a torn pec last year. I think he did return for the playoffs though, but he was out for a big chunk of last year. They have Ode Abouche, who played pretty solid. I think he had something like, he only blew like 33 blocks on like 1,875 snaps. Like he was a pretty solid player last year, but they still have that interior question marks. And you mentioned the signing of former All-Pro center Corey Lindsley from the Packers, but that's, I think, an opportunity for us to really win is that interior pressure and really pushing those guards early.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
I
Chase, what
think
do you
that
got?
the biggest area that we're looking at with the Chargers is their inability to defend pass catching backs. They were second worst in DOCE score last year, DOCE, which is dump off containment efficiency. They just bled up against teams. Like Seahawks were first or the worst DOCE score. That was 1.63. They were 1.52. And then the next closest team was the Jets with a 1.33, and then the Giants 1.24. So they were really, really bad. Meanwhile, they added some big pieces in the offseason to try and solidify this defense. And Derwin James is obviously a massive, massive addition. But I believe that Antonio Gibson, if he's used correctly and can actually get involved in the passing game, I think Antonio Gibson could have a massive, massive game. In week one, we could rely on him very heavily.
So with those dump offs, though, do we see a little bit more J.D. McKissic?
So that was the thing. Like last year, J.D. McKissic, I think, like doubled the third down snaps that Antonio Gibson had. This year, obviously, he had time to be able to work on the pass blocking, which I think was a major concern for the Washington football team offense, was having him block, blitzing, edge rushers, because he played wide receiver half the time in college. So now that they had the full offseason, I don't think that we're going to see the same split where it's 60% J.D. McKissic and 20 or 40% Antonio Gibson, or whatever you want to 66-33. I think it's going to be closer to 50-50, if not Antonio Gibson actually having the majority of the work on third down. So I'm excited for Antonio Gibson this year, and I'm excited to see his usage in week one. We should find out very, very early on, how they're going to utilize him.
Yeah,
He's on
you've
my
been
fantasy team. I love that.
You've been hyping Gibson up on third down all off season. So I'm really like Ron could just totally shit in your Wheaties right
100%.
on the third play of the game when JD comes strolling in on 3rd and 8.
So they value JD
100%.
McKissic.
He definitely could.
He's definitely getting work, but I do agree with Chase. I do think that work is a little bit less. I think you got to look at Antonio Gibson. They wanted to focus him as a running back purely as his rookie season, transitioning from a wide receiver over at Memphis to a running back in the NFL. And I think that was a big piece of it. And I think they have thrown that more at him. And I think we actually finally started to see in the preseason him on a third down. And guess what? He converted his third down attempt. Like it's, we're starting to see a little bit more of that. And I do agree. I think McKissic still plays an important role, but I do think we're going to see a lot more Gibson than we were used to on third down.
Where I'm looking at more an increase in not as much of an increase in Gibson is probably the 2-minute drill. Like I think that's when we'll see a little bit more McKissic in there over Gibson. I think Gibson will still end up playing the 3-down role, unlike he did last year. I think he'll play a lot more on third downs, like in normal situations. However, in the hurry up offense, I think we're going to still see McKissic.
Now, one last thing, Curtis Samuel. I'm going to do a quick pulse. Is he playing this week? Let's get a yes/no roundtable.
Yeah, he'll play.
You think he plays?
He'll split snaps in the slot with Adam Humphries because there's no way they're going to play him that wide.
I don't think he's playing. He doesn't look good. He doesn't look right. He doesn't have the speed at all. I think he's. We'll see him in a couple of weeks.
He doesn't need the speed because he's going to be playing on the inside. He just needs the quickness.
Yeah, but that's the groin injury, man. Though cutting on an injured groin is as bad as it gets. So
I don't think he'll be there for the Giants either. I think we may see him week 3 because it's a quick turnaround week 2.
That makes sense.
So what are you guys expecting this week? Coming away with the W?
It's going to be such a letdown if we lose. It's been 2 years since I can go to a game. I think the fans are going to bring it this week. I'm really excited to be back down there, but it's going to be such a letdown if they lose.
I think we're going to see a very low-scoring affair. I don't think that we're going to see a ton of fireworks from Fitzpatrick. This is a very good defense in the secondary that added Chris Harris, who's amazing, slot cornerback. This is going to be a very low-scoring game. I'm predicting 20-17 probably. Washington is going to be very close, going to come down to the wire. Like we talked about earlier, Washington likes to play these close to the best games where we're grinding it out. I could even see 17-14. but I think it's gonna be a 3-point game, no more than like 40 points put up.
You know, it's funny because I was looking at it when you said the 20-17. We had lost to the Seahawks 20-15 last year, and it kind of feels a little bit like high-powered quarterback, but a lot of defense being played, kind of thing. Mark, you're shaking your head. You think it's going to be lights out?
Oh no! I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I was shaking my head about that Seahawks game last year.
Dude, I go back to that stretch, and this is the thing that I like to tell Washington football fans is you look at that stretch. We beat the Steelers, we barely lost to the Seahawks, and who did we beat right after? The 49ers. We beat the 49ers, and we were playing a mix of like Dwayne Haskins and a very injured Alex Smith. Alex Smith couldn't finish the game against the 49ers. We had Haskins having to start against Seattle. The fact that we kept it 20-15 against the Seattle Seahawks with Dwayne Haskins as our quarterback with the weapons that we had, and Antonio Gibson didn't play in the game against the 49ers or the Seahawks. Like, we belong, right? If you look at the top teams in the NFC East, the Seahawks are right up there. The 49ers are right up there. Then you got the Bucks and the Packers and a lot of those teams and maybe the Cardinals. But we played with the best of these teams we didn't have Ryan Fitzpatrick. We didn't have De'Ami Brown. We didn't have a healthy Antonio Gibson. We didn't have
William Jackson.
We didn't have William
Jamin
Jackson. Jamin Davis. There's a lot of pieces that we've added. We get a healthy Matt Ioannidis back. Like, this team could be legit. And I think when I look at my expectations from the Washington football team this year are that we are in that top 5 or 6 teams in the division. I still don't think we're the number 1 or 2 yet. I think we got another offseason to try to get us there. But I'm expecting playoffs for us, and I want to definitely get there. So, I would be very disappointed if we start off this season with a loss to the Chargers. I do want to take this game, especially with the new coaching staff, all the way around. They totally cleaned house there. We got to come out of it with a W.
The Chargers are one of the best teams in the NFL this year, in my opinion. So,
aren't?
It's going to be tough.
You said are or aren't?
Are. They're definitely in the top 10 teams for me this upcoming season. It's a very well-built organization. They just deal with injuries. If they can stay healthy, I mean, they're a top team. So if we beat them, it's a major testament to what Washington has done, throughout this past 2 off seasons.
Does it feel like we always play teams that have new coaching staffs week 1? I always feel like we get the new coaching staff. Like, I'm even going back to like when we had to play Chip Kelly when the Eagles had brought him in, and it was like nobody had seen that fast offense. Like, we always get the new coaching staff. So seeing Joe Lombardi come in and Ronaldo Hill and this new offense that we're going to see over in LA, it's like, we don't know what to expect. We didn't get to see Herbert in the preseason. They didn't show us anything. So we always get that like added extra wrinkle week 1, though. That's one thing that I get frustrated with. But we'll see what happens. All right, gang. Let's do a quick roundtable wrap up here.
Such a funny thing to get worked up about.
He was fired up.
The Chip Kelly game like still pisses me off though. Like, I was like, nobody knew what to expect from that offense, and we got him week 1, and it was like, I remember being on primetime TV too, and we just got smoked. It was brutal. So, all right, Chase, I'm going to start with you because we're going to have the next 5 minutes here going for the wrap up for Chase. I'm just playing, but why don't you let us know where everyone can find you?
You guys can go check us out over there at fantasyintervention.com. Once again, that's fantasyintervention.com. You guys can also go find us over there on Twitter at FF_intervention and join our circle _. Make sure you guys go subscribe on our YouTube, youtube.com/fantasyintervention. And we should be having some of these shows back up and running now on Google and Apple and Spotify. Like, it's been like months since we were able to get these back up and running, but I've spent a lot of time trying to figure all that out. So go check us out on Spotify, Apple, Google, all the platforms for the most part. If you guys have a platform that you want to find us on, just let me know and DM me, and I'll make sure that we're on there. But yeah, appreciate you guys for tuning in.
Mark?
You can find me on Twitter at Mark Crow, not Troy Apke, Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm going to troll you with that all season. That was great, Chase. Oh, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly fan. Hey, Chip Kelly had a nice little win this last week for UCLA there. So they had that nice little upset. But no, you can find me at WhatGibbsFF come check me out on Twitter. Love interacting with the fans, especially Washington football team fans, fantasy football fans, everybody, but especially the Washington football team fans out there. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week, hopefully with the W against the Chargers.
Woo, let's go.